Parashat Vayetchanan. This shiur is dedicated first of all Leilui Nishmat Meir ben Mordechai HaKohen ולעילוי נשמת מזל בת חנה ולהבדיל לרפואה שלמה מזל בת לאה חיים ישראל הלוי בן בתיה אילנה רבקה בת רחל תהיה להם רפואה שלמה גבריאל בן פניר בנימין בן חנה ראשל רחמים בן חנה. So, Vayetchanan, I would beg. Moshe is pleading HaKadosh Baruch Hu, begging him to enter Eretz Israel, the land of Israel, but he was only giving a chance to really see it from a distance. One of the things the Torah, the Parasha is talking about this week, is Dvekut be'Hashem. Dvekut really means attachment or dedication to a highest level in his mitzvot, being careful from avodah zarah, designating those cities of refuge, making a covenant with Hashem, accepting all malchut shamayim, which is basically the Shema Yisrael, the famous statement they make, keeping the mitzvot in Eretz Israel and the reward of that, and then of course the Parasha talks about the struggle that they had, the conflict that they had with the nations of Canaan, with their crooked culture that they have, and so on and so forth. And the Torah says, of course, "Einechem haroot asher asa Hashem beBaal Peor." Your own eyes have seen what HaKadosh Baruch Hu had done for Baal Peor. Ki kol ha'ish asher halach acharei Baal Peor. Any person who went after Baal Peor, Hishmido HaKadosh Hashem Elokecha b'kirbecha. He removed you, he destroyed, he eliminated from you. And then it says, Ve'atem advekim be'Hashem Elokechem. Those of you who are attached to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Chaim kulchem hayom. You are all alive today. I don't know, that's a little weird. What the statements that they make here, all these things. The Torah here kind of parallels the dedication of Am Yisrael to Ribono Shel Olam, parallel to their attachment to Baal Peor. So what does it really mean? And of course, we'll talk about it later on, where they were walking into the land, and one hand was Baal Peor, on the other side of the hill, there was the grave of Moshe Rabbeinu. Am Yisrael had to walk in the middle and says, okay, you make a choice, whatever you want to go. But what is exactly that the meaning of this Kabbalah, of this acceptance in terms of us to our Avodat Hashem? What does it have to do with us, basically? So, let's look at this way. When the Torah says, Chaim kulchem hayom, what is the definition? And today in the morning we spoke a lot about definition in order to know what to do. What is the definition of the Torah to the word Chaim, which is life? What is life? So let's look at the Avodat Elilim, the idol worshipping of Baal Peor, which was something very unnatural, very natural, as they say. The essence of this Avodah, this idol worshipping, as it might seems bizarre to us today. By the way, I'm going to tell you the following. The only Avodah Zarah that exists today from that time, in a way, is the Avodah of Baal Peor, and you'll see soon why. That Avodah Zarah exists transformed a little bit. Only one? But exists from that time, I said, from that time. From that time, only one, yes. Or all of it. And what is that? What's the essence of this avodah? Okay, the essence of this avodah, is the way to worship is defecating in public, exposing all your private parts in public. Of course, there would be some people that would tell you that kind of avodah, that kind of ritual really comes to express the freedom of what we're feeling. You're allowed to feel what you want to feel, and so on and so forth. And this is a very humane way of designing the worshippers, that they can't really control their urges, and that's why they do it in public, and so on and so forth. Like an expression of your own self, in a way to show everybody that you don't care what they think about you. I'm doing this in public. I don't know about you, but you see that this, in a way, the concept exists today. Especially what we're going today. Now, as much as they cannot really, what's interesting about it, that public exposure to show that they cannot control. I mean, nobody can really, that's one of the things you cannot control in your body, is the ability to, defecate and to urinate. You can't say, I can't do it. Your body will explode. You will have to. So to show you, as much as I cannot control my abilities to access the waste out of my body, so is I cannot control my other urges and to whatever would derive from these urges. In other words, it's free for all. I can't control it. I was born like this. I have no choice. Blah, blah, blah. You hear the stories all day long today. All day long. And people will tell, well, what happened 50 years ago? Well, 50 years ago, it was still like this, but they were afraid to show themselves. And that's nonsense. It's absolutely nonsense. The essence of the ritual of Peor is the statement that everything that is natural should be okay, should be allowed. It doesn't make a difference with whom and how and when. It's natural, you're good to go. And that limitation of modesty and the ability of man to choose and to control his natural lives, according to that, is impossible. And this is so oppositional to the way the Torah looks at things. Now, as you see today, this is exactly what we're experiencing today in society, whether it's in America, whether it's in Israel, and so on and so forth. That's exactly it. So in concept, that avodah zarah, that idol worshipping still exists today in concept, still exists today. And they show it in public, and they make parades, and the whole entire thing, and they have flags all over the place, and so on and so forth. When I read last week's Parasha, afterwards, when I learned last week's Haftarah, when it says, Eicha הייתה לזונה קריה נאמנה. Kirya Ne'emana is Jerusalem. How did that turn into a harlot? I was thinking about the gay parade in Jerusalem. And how true that is until today. That today the battle in Israel is not just about the courts, it's about uprooting religion by the fact that everything is allowed. I'm going to make a law that everything is allowed. So therefore I'm basically making a secular insult against religion and just against Jewish concepts and the Jewish way of life, the original Jewish way of life. From the Torah, from the biblical Torah, from the Torah shebichtav, the written Torah that is explaining into our parasha, it says, "V'atem advekim be'Hashem Elokechem k'chaim kolchem hayom." Those of you who are attached to God are connected, are alive today, until all the way through the Gemara, that took this concept few steps further when it claims tzaddikim b'mitatam kurim chayim, righteous people, even when they're dead, are called alive. Now, we're not talking about, Chabad concept of that matter. And also, it says, the Gemara says, Rasha'im b'chayem kruim metim. And wicked people, while they're alive, are called considered to be dead. If you want to look further into that, look in Brachot, Daf. Come on, you all learn Brachot.
25.
Yudchet.
Никто не прошел.
Amud Bet. Now, don't guess. If you don't know, learn a lesson. If you don't know, don't say it. Now, according to that, and even further, Chazal that lived way before the politically correct, era that we live in, give an unglorifying title of dead, so-called, not only to the wicked people, but also to the Amei Haaretz, those people who are Amei Haratzot. In other words, their life is not considered to be life. So really, in a way, who is alive and who is dead? Who is alive and who is dead? I mean, in Israel, there is a concept that they call, for example, Bo Na'aseh Chaim, right? Tzaddik. מה זה בארץ לעשות חיים? בוא נעשה חיים. לאכול, to eat, לעשות חיים, let's do life in Israel. Is to eat, to drink, to party, right? זה לעשות, זה חיים זה? That's not חיים. So the whole concept of what life is really not, we don't talk about it, we don't address it, and guess what? Day in, day out, week in, week out, year in, decade out, we waste our life and we actually don't live life. So maybe it's time for actually stop and let's determine what life is all about. So in order to make some order between, or clarity between life and death, between the living and the dead, we really need to take a deeper look into what is actual life, or in other words, life itself. Now you pay attention, in Hebrew, life is not singular, it is plural. Chaim, double. Mem, when you, there will be multiple. So, in other words, as you know, people who speak Hebrew, it looks to them like obvious, that's not a problem. But really it's quite unique, because if you look at the words in English or in other languages, when we talk about vita, life, vida, vi, and so on and so forth, all these are singular, when in Hebrew it's plural. So what does it mean? That we have like the double life? We suffer here from multiple personality disorder, right?
For everybody.
Doctor. But when we said life,
Chaim, we say so we meaning everybody.
For everybody. So what do we need? What do we learn from this? So we learn that in terms of us as Jews, we have double life. Not only double opinions, but we also have double life. And the Hebrew language determines life in two different levels, in two different plateaus. We have the life of the body, physical. And we have the life of the nefesh, of the soul, which is the spiritual life. There are certain concepts in Chinese medicine similar, but it's not so clear cut as it is with us. We're talking about basically on the same, 6 to 1, half a dozen of the other. It's like the two sides of the coin. But if you going to do a contest, what's more important, you'll see, surprisingly enough, the importance of spiritual life, your soul, your spiritual, is much more important than your physical. Much more important. If you don't agree with that, well, you can drink cold water and move on, or you could actually ask any doctor who is in oncology and will tell you that a person who will give up, that will cause an heist in his death, and a person that doesn't give up would actually live longer, or will give death a fight. So the nefesh is more important. So, on the other hand, you have a tzaddik that his life continues through his learning and through his conduct. Way after that, he's continuing to be called alive. What's going on with the AC? It's like so hot in here. And on the other hand, the Rasha or Am Haaretz that does not develop his life, his spiritual life, his intellect. Not only his neshama, his intellect, or he's basically considered to be dead. How do we exactly supposed to connect to this life and to earn the title alive, but really to do so truthfully? So the pasuk gives us a direction. In other words, we need to be dvekim, attached ourselves, connected to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. In other words, to continuously looking for an ongoing connection with HaKadosh Baruch Hu in all aspects of our lives. Now, of course, that is already a big challenge, and it might even seem to be a little bit intimidating, but nevertheless, that is what we ask for, to be b'dvekut b'HaKadosh Baruch Hu itself. We did speak about it today in the morning, and maybe we'll mention it later on for what Rav Steinbruch says about that. But this is not, by the way, the death of my own self or my own who I am and so on and so forth. By all means, it's not just the other way around. When you live life without this kind of dedication, you don't develop yourself, the sense of self, because you are under the boundaries of society. They will tell you what to do, they will tell you what to think, they will tell you what is right, they will tell you what is wrong, and what you say and what you think is absolutely not important, and you have no word in anything that is happening around you. In the world of Torah, it's just the other way around. You don't believe me? Fine. Open any Gemara. There is numerous opinions of many rabbis on any given topic. And even those rabbis, which the halakha at the end is not defined like them, still deserve a place of mention. They mention what their opinion is, because that opinion is true, because it's coming out to find out, to reveal the truth. Where in the world outside today is to tell you everything, anything but the truth. Is to sell you a lie and threaten you and bully you, not to call it a lie. You would find yourself, if you go with the world, with the way of the world today, saying things that you could not believe you will be saying. You're going to find yourself believing in things that will be impossible for you to believe, but because of that peer pressure, that societal pressure, I'm sorry to tell you, this is not life. This is lunacy. And this is not Sparta. Chazal themselves paid attention to this difficulty of being always attached to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and they says, how are we going to do that? How are we going to attach ourselves to HaKadosh Baruch Hu? How are we going to go in his ways, and so on and so forth? Because they say, Halo HaKadosh Baruch Hu Esh Ochela, is a consuming fire. How are we going to get closer? We're going to get consumed. If you want to try to get closer to the sun, you're going to be vaporized. It's impossible. So therefore the Gemara says, Haloch achar midotav shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's the Gemara in Masechet Sota. Thank you very much. What daf are you learning? What daf are you holding?
Yudat Tedvav.
You know, because then daf Yudalet Amud Aleph. Good thing you do Chazara so you remember that. You see? I catch you guys. So, in other words, you could try to follow his path. What's to follow his path? Talbish Arumim. People that don't have clothing, give them clothing. Give them money to buy clothing. Give them jobs. Help people get a job. Go visit the sick. Right? Go do nichum avelim. Be merciful. Be kind. And so on and so on and so forth. That is what we say. Rashi in Masechet Shabbat says, "Aaseh atzmi kmoto lidabek bedrachav." I'm going to make myself like him. I'll follow that example. Why? Because this is how I'm going to attach myself to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And that is Masechet Shabbat, Daf Lamed Gimel Amud Bet. Thank you. So how do we actually do that? How do we, I wouldn't say imitate, but follow HaKadosh Baruch Hu's example? So that what the Torah tells us, and there may be something that we don't want to, maybe that's something that we don't want to admit, but when the Torah tells us about teaches us that a person who attached himself to HaKadosh Baruch Hu has the ability to control his urges, to control his thoughts, to control his life, and when you control your life, you are free. Not like today, they tell you be free has no control. On the contrary, that's the way to lose control. You're not in control anymore. So that dvikut gives a person the ability to really control your urges, and even the things that are called to you natural, the urge to eat and to do other things that we call natural, also has to be. If you look at the Rambam, at the Yad HaChazakah, when he calls Kedusha, the book of holiness, what is the book of holiness all about? The book of holiness talks about forbidding foods, or what you could and cannot eat, and who you could or cannot have marital relationship with. Not like other nations or other people, that for them, if you want to be holy, you cannot marry a woman, or if you want to be holy, you cannot drink wine. The Torah tells you could do all these things, but in a certain way. Which way? The way that HaKadosh Baruch Hu prescribes to you. And when you come to realize this, all of a sudden, all the decisions that you would make, even why am I marrying a woman, and you can only marry a woman, and right? By the way, talking about quantum physics, if there is a man, there has to be a woman. It can't be a couple with two men and two wives, right? It's impossible. But it's okay for quantum physics, but for political correct, it's not okay. So, you could, I wouldn't say override them, but you could direct those urges. You could give them a path that would be a constructive path, not a destructive path. When we develop our own internal world, we really come to materialize our potential, and we actually put to usage the abilities, the kochot, the powers that we have to fix the world and to help us also attach to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We are in our way, each one to his ability, is maxed out in his abilities to connect himself to HaKadosh Baruch Hu to the best that he can. The Torah requires you to look inside to yourself. The Torah tells you it's good to have guilt. The Torah tells you, look at yourself. What are you doing? Examine. That's the process of Tshuva. That's when we do Vidui in Tefillah. That's when we have the month of Tshuva, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur. It's all about internal looking at yourself. This is not about getting a tree and hanging gifts around it and don't forget to bring a gift to your mistress. This is not about it. This is all to look inside yourself. The Torah tells you, look into yourself. Check yourself. Don't worry about it. It's okay. Not just an external show that you seem to be looking okay, that everybody will say, oh, what a nice person. In other words, to have life of awareness, of choice, of decency and dignity and self-control. You cannot live dignified life if you don't have self-control. You're going to disgrace yourself in public. And so let's go a little bit about what we say about Eretz Israel, because that's in a parasha as well. I want to show you something. Chazal in Midrash Rabbah for Parashat Kedoshim, in Parasha Chafhei, says the following: you hold that planting trees in Eretz Israel, that is a way in walking in the way of Hashem's world, right? La'asok b'matah, to plant things. It says, "En pirusho lishtatev," that means not to just take like some kind of a ceremony thing like they do in Tu B'Shvat in Israel. It's to actually plant stuff. But what it means, according to that, is really to become a farmer. It's really to become a farmer, to wear your farming clothes, to roll your sleeve, to plant, to water, to whatever you need to do. Pull the weeds out, prune, and so on and so forth. This is the avodah of dvikut in Hashem, of walking in His way, and that's the first thing that you need to do when we are commanded when you enter the land, and that's what the Midrash says. Rabbi Yehuda ben Rabbi Simon patach. Rabbi Yehuda, in the name of Rabbi Simon, made a statement. Acharei Hashem Elokechem telechu, which it says in Dvarim, after Hashem you should follow Hashem's. V'chi efshar lebasar v'adam le'iloch achar Hashem. Can a person walk after God? I mean, what does that mean? It says, "Acharei Hashem telechu ubo tidabekun." You're going to attach yourself to Him. V'chi efshar lebasar v'adam la'alot la'shamayim u'yidabek b'shchina. Can a person, a mortal, can go up to the heavens and attach himself to God's glory? I mean, what are you saying here? What are you saying? It says, "Oto shekatuv ki Hashem Elokecha esh ochela v'ata omer ubo tidabekun." He's a consuming fire. You tell me to be attached to Him? However, it says in Sefer Bereshit, Perek Bet, Pasuk Chet. Man, you guys are off. Vayita Hashem Elokechem began be'Eden. Hashem Nata, He planted a gan, an orchard in a place called Eden. Afatem, even you. כשנכנסים לארץ לא תתעסקו אלא במתת תחילה. Stop planting. In other words, don't live in Ramat Bet Shemesh. If you're going to Israel or you move into Israel, which you should just hold a little bit because of all the craziness that's going there just in the week of Tisha B'Av, which is really amazing to me. What you should be doing, you should be going to the Galil. There's nothing wrong with the Galil. As a matter of fact, we should inhabit the Galil before we lose it completely and go plant. You don't need to live in an Anglo community where you're going to be paying close to $1 million for an apartment, because all the Anglos live there in Ramat Bet Shemesh. That you should not be doing. Go to the Galil. It's your land, your homeland. For that, you could have stayed in the Bronx. You didn't have to go to Ramat Bet Shemesh for that. It says, וזה שכתוב וכי תבואו אל הארץ, because that's what it says. When you reach the earth, ונטעתם כל עץ מאכל, you should plant fruit trees. HaKadosh Baruch Hu dealt with planting, and you should also follow his example and plant fruit trees in Eretz Israel. And this is the Hidabkut in Hashem. Now, in regards to working the land in Israel, it's very, very important to bring the words of the Chatam Sofer on that matter. Very important. In his Chidushim to Masechet Sukkah in Daf Lamed Vav, Dibur HaMatchil Hadome LeKushi, he refers to the Machloket of Rabbi Ishmael and Rabbi Shimon in Masechet Brachot in Daf Lamed Hey. Amud Bet. It says, Lo Yamush Sefer HaTorah Ze Mipicha, that this holy book should not remove from your lips. You're always going to learn Torah. Rabbi Ishmael Omer, Yachol Dvarim Kichtavam, right? It's impossible to do it the way it says. Sha'adam lo ya'asok b'shum davar ela b'limud Torah. Why, he's not going to do anything just to learn Torah. Talmud Lomar, right? It says, V'asafta de'grancha v'tiroshcha v'yitzarecha. The Torah itself told me, go collect your harvest. Then Rabbi Ishmael says. In other words, Hanegra bahen minhag derech eretz. That's what, by the way, derech eretz, that's what it means. Do what everybody else does, not, in terms of working and so on and so forth. Not like be polite and open the door to old ladies and so on and so forth. That's derech eretz, right? Torah im melacha. In other words, work. Torah first, always, but also trabajo. Mucho trabajo, poco dinero. But that's what you got to do. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai says, Efshar Adam choresh b'shat charisha. A person what? Now it's time for you to plow, so you need to plow. Zorea b'shat zriya. Now it's time to harvest, so you have to plant, you have to plant. Kotzer b'shat tzira. Harvest when it's time to harvest, right? V'dash b'shat disa, v'zore b'shat aruach. And you're going to be busy all these things. No, okay, Torah ma'aleh. Well, when are you going to have time to learn Torah? When are you going to have time to learn Torah? It's a great question. It says Ela. So what does it mean? Bezman sheYisrael osin retzono shel makom. When Am Yisrael does whatever Kadosh Baruch Hu wants them, melachtam naaset al yedei acherim. Their job will be done by others. They don't need to worry about that. Ve'em pnuyim lilmod Torah bilvad, and they'll have all the time in the world to sit down and learn Torah. ומקיימים כפשוטו לא ימוש ספר התורה הזה מפיך, and by doing so, literally, they're going to fulfill, in other words, the sentence that you're always going to learn Torah. ובזמן, and in the time, שישראל עושים רצונו של מקום, right? אינם עושים, they don't do the work, מלאכתם נעשה לעצמם, in other words, ועשתה דגנך ויצריך, and so on and so forth. Says the Chatam Sofer, it says that according to his opinion, Rabbi Ishmael did not say Mikra v'asafta degancha unless in Eretz Israel, when most of Eretz Israel are on that land. Most of the Jews, are in the land, sitting down in Eretz Israel. Why? Because then working the land, mitzvah mishum yeshur haaretz. It's a mitzvah to work the land, not just to build buildings and towers. I just don't understand those Israelis, what in the world happened to them. Instead of we're having fields, they build buildings and towers. They're obsessed with towers. You're not in Hong Kong. You're in Israel. You have to work the land. And to bring about the holy fruit. That's why when you have a chance to buy a wine from Israel or a wine from France, do yourself a favor, buy a wine from Israel. You have a fruit from Israel. Why? Because a part of the nutrients of Eretz Israel goes into this wine and it goes into your body. When you eat a grape from Eretz Israel, a part of Eretz Israel goes into your body. And if you're going to tell me, but Rebbe, ma'al terumot u'ma'asrot, so if you don't know, so be mafrish tomorrow. If you're not sure, to take it without a bracha. You don't know how to do so, open the Siddur, or we'll make a shiur. There's a shiur. By the way, I think it was one of Rabbi Vadia's son, I forgot, maybe Rabbi Avraham. He has a whole, you look on YouTube, exactly how to do Terumot u'Ma'asrot. There's a whole bunch of them. Mordechai Eliyahu has, Alav Shalom, has a shiur. So if you don't know how to do it, go open it and do it, and you know, and that's it. But don't tell me I'm not going to buy from Israel because I don't know how to do it. So learn. Because that's exactly it. Chayecha lo chayim. That's why the Torah says, "V'asavta degalcha," right? And it says, "Uvoaz zoreh goren haseorim balayla." Why? Bishum mitzvah, because it's a mitzvah. And as much as you cannot say, "Lo, I'm not going to put tefillin because I'm learning the Torah," so is a person in Israel. He's not going to say, "I'm not going to harvest because I'm learning Torah," because that is a mitzvah as well. Everything is a mitzvah. However, this is in Eretz Israel. But in Chutz La'aretz, Kol ma shemarbe b'yeshuv ha'olam, whatever you deal with the regular stuff, marbe churban ba'avodat Hashem. The more or the less you learn Torah outside of Israel, you are destroying the house of Hashem. Because you are poresh michaye Torah, which is your mitzvah, and you're going to do something that is not a mitzvah. And this is what he's saying here is so hard for us to accept. Very hard for us to accept. It says, "Uvechutz la'aretz modeh Rabbi Ishmael leRabbi Shimon Bar Yochai." And according to the Chatam Sofer, outside of Israel, even Rabbi Ishmael would agree with Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. But in Eretz Israel, Rabbi Ishmael says, "V'asavta degalcha," because it's a mitzvah as well. And that is not being pushed away from Limud Torah. So with the Limud Torah, we also have to take the perot of Eretz Israel and to bring the fruits about and do and so on and so forth. So the mitzvah of learning Torah, Rabotai, is very, very, very important. But I'm going to read you something from Rav Steinbruch, which we spoke about today. That I'm going to tell you, learning Torah is not enough. To be in yeshiva all day long and learning is good, but not enough. Rav Steinbruch says, the actual merit to become a Talmid Chacham and Bnei Torah, to sit in Bet Medrash, we don't need to explain that. That's pretty obvious. We don't need to explain that. And in our times, Zu ma'ala afilu b'bchinat sur mera. In other words, it's also an additional good because you are removing yourself from bad because of what he says, whatever is happening in the streets, the immodesty and immorality that you see in the streets, so you're saving yourself from that, nothing to do. But even more so, when by learning Torah you're able to connect yourself to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Days and night, ashrav ve'ashrei chelko, lucky him and lucky his portion. And this is exactly what David HaMelech asked. Shifti bevet Hashem kol yemei chayai. So if David HaMelech asked for it, who are us not to ask? David HaMelech, was a king, he knew it. It says, however, here, pay attention. HaTorah mekadeshet ha'adam bedeotav, ashkafotav, udrachav. When you learn Torah, the Torah would sanctify your thoughts, your outlook, and your actions. It's not enough that you have the title Ben Torah, but tzarich shekol derachav ve'anhagotav yihyu chen. You also need to conduct yourself according to something that is be worthwhile to be called Ben Torah. If you were about to do something in front of somebody that knows your mother, you would not do it. Why would you do something that the Torah tells you not to do when you know it's going to be disgraceful with the Torah? Ve'az, and when you do so, mekadesh Hashem bechol alichotav. Therefore, when you do that, when you try to live up to the title, the son of the Torah, everything that you do will be Kiddush Hashem, will be sanctifying God's name. Ve'ashra ve'lucky him, ve'ashrei chelko, am ha'machzik bo bezeh u'bezeh. Lucky a person who does that. And it says, in other words, don't ever say, well, I pay my dues. I came to yeshiva. I learned 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. I pay my dues. It's time for me to move on. When you do so, it's an indication that you actually never were a Ben Torah because it did not fix your way. But you got to tell me, okay, Rabbi, that's very nice. Yafeh darashta, yafeh amarta, very nice. But, lemaaseh, what could I do? I have to pay my bills. So it's your outlook. The outlook that counts. What do I mean? If you are in yeshiva and you can't wait to go out, יצא שכרו בהפסדו. The reward that you had to come to yeshiva is actually lost because all you want to do is get out. But if you are working and everything that you do is geared for you towards you coming and be kovea itim la Torah, even your work is considered to be a shiur mitzvah. That's why it's very important for you not to miss a day of Torah. Now, it doesn't make a difference if your wife needs you to help with shopping, or your wife needs your help with kids, or your wife needs to help with the mailman, whatever that would be. You need to come to be kovea itim la Torah, because not only your life should be surrounded around that, also your children. And when you go to work and you gear your whole entire day, you going to work becomes a shiur mitzvah towards the mitzvah of learning Torah. And that is something that you need to know. The dvekut in Hashem Yitbarach has to be across the board, but could not be achieved without a daily learning Torah. A day without Torah is like a day without sunshine. You can't go about without a day of Torah, whatever there will be. Explain to you, I buy a diamond ring, say, listen, I'll buy you a ring, just do me a favor, let me learn in peace. I come to yeshiva from this time to this time. For me, the world does not exist. I am now officially dead for this 2 hours, 3 hours that I'm learning. That, when you establish yourself in such a way, then you start to gain a little bit control over your life. You could start thinking in the patterns of a Ben Torah. Right now, tomorrow night, we're going to be fasting, which is the great darkness of Am Yisrael, the Churban Habayim, the destruction of the second temple. And I'm feeling so sad. I'm feeling so sad. I mean, 1973, when the Yom Kippur War, people thought it was Churban Habayim. Coming to look at it, it was hard. But Churban Habayim, the house is not going to fall. The third house, the Am Yisrael, is not going to fall on a war unleashed on us by our enemies. Hashem will fight for us, and we won at the end. Whether you want to admit it or you don't want to admit it, Israel won. They were 34 kilometers from Damascus. They're 101 kilometers from Cairo. Just to remind you that Israel at the end was able to do a comeback and turn around and actually won the war. Okay, but Jews don't like to admit they do good things, so of course for them they lost the wars and so on and so forth. However, the destruction of the state of Israel would not come from a war, would not even come from Iran with the nuclear bombs and all the other nonsense that they're coming up with. It's not going to come because of this administration or that administration. The destruction of Am Yisrael will come from Am Yisrael itself. They're not going to be ejected out of you. You're going to generate your own subject of destruction. And what is happening in Am Yisrael now is the direct copy of what happened in the destruction of the temple. A Jew against a Jew, bringing in foreign forces, calling the President of the United States to intervene in Eretz Yisrael is exactly what happened, but just so much rapid, because that happened during the times of the grandchildren of King Herod, right? But today is happening in a month. So there's a great process of almost destruction, and there's a great darkness right now. But as I explained to you last week, because there is a great darkness, we know that we are so close. There's a tremendous light. And we should not fall into this panic. We should go b'derech Hashem. Darkei darkei noam v'chol netivotei shalom. The ways of the Torah is the way of pleasantness, of being pleasant. And it's all about bringing harmony. We are the ones who should bring people close to each other, not those who bring people apart from each other. We, as religious people, and I can tell this even to the people sitting in Israel, the religious people in Israel should not interfere within the political game that's going on. There should be the factor that puts everybody together, not to take side to this side or to take that side, whether it's Bibi, whether it's Mibi, whether it's whatever it is. We should be the one who is the glue to put together, because we need to have all the Jews together. This is a great opportunity, and specifically because there's such darkness now, we know that we're so close. If we'll do the right thing, redemption will come kehiref ayin. Be'ita chishena. I will hasten it when the time has come, and I have a great feeling that we are so close, but we should be very careful and do what HaKadosh Baruch Hu does, follow His ways, and let's be merciful. Let's be kind. And that's exactly the message that I see in this parasha that come exactly, of course, after the great destruction of Tisha B'Av. So, but that is something we should take ourselves, each one to ourselves. Let's bring other people closer to us. Let's bring them close to us. Let's embrace whoever we could embrace. I'm not saying, to such a point that you're going to be Meshana Sidrei Bereshit, like putting up 7-year-olds to read the Torah, because today things are different. That's a mistake. That's absolutely crazy. I'm talking about being nice to another Jew. Don't let Jews fall behind. Bring them closer to shul. If you want to give an aliyah, don't give it to a kid who wants to get an aliyah because his daddy has a lot of money, who is not even bar mitzvah. Give it an aliyah to a person who comes to shul because he just felt the need, even though he comes with a ponytail and an earring, and you know what, maybe even wear sandals. Let him and give him an aliyah. Make him feel welcome. Open your doors of your shuls, open the doors of your heart. Welcome people. You see a Jew, smile. Don't argue with them about politics. Remember, this is our job. And Be'ezrat Hashem, when we do so, we should be able to attach ourselves to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And that is the essence of Chaim. Chaim is determined by your closeness to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, by your willingness to do what He is willing to do. Ki HaKadosh Baruch Hu is not chafetz b'mot harasha. He's not want the wicked people to die. He wants them to return from their wicked ways. And we should be the accessory to do that, to help them come back. And we should be the ones who welcome them in the gates of Tshuva back to Am Yisrael. So guys, it's going to be a hard day tomorrow. It's going to be hot and humid. But as hard as it is, take this hardness and forge yourself to a place that you could actually be solid enough to stand for what you know is right, to stand for the Torah, what it stands for, to stand for Am Yisrael, to stand for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Amen.